These 6 individuals made decisions so spectacularly poor. From neighborhood disputes to public meltdowns, these are the stories of people whose aggressive behavior led to consequences they never saw coming. It was October 3rd, 2017, inside a small parish church in upstate New York, where a quiet afternoon wedding was being prepared. Several staff and family members worked quietly near the altar, adjusting aisle runners, placing floral stands, and lighting 5-foot candles, while the air carried a faint smell of melted wax. Florence Adams, 56, entered the church while preparations were underway and walked directly into the front pews despite clear setup activity near the altar. She lived alone nearby and was known to staff for repeatedly disputing seating rules, noise limits, and access during scheduled events. She seated herself in rows reserved for the ceremony and remained there as workers attempted to continue. When staff indicated the area would soon be needed and visitors were being redirected to side seating, Florence stayed in place. As preparations continued, she shifted further forward, blocking access to the aisle and forcing staff to stop and work around her presence. As workers moved through the aisle to adjust the runner again, Florence stood and began moving toward the altar instead of relocating. A coordinator and another staff member stepped in front of her path, attempting to redirect her away from the reserved area. Florence stopped and engaged them, gesturing sharply and raising her voice as nearby family members turned to watch. The exchange delayed the setup and drew attention inside the church. During the confrontation, Florence continued forward between the floral stands and the tall candle placements. She wore a long blouse and a lightweight cardigan, with loose sleeves extending past her wrists. As she passed one of the floor-standing candles, the fabric of her right sleeve brushed directly against the open flame. At first, there was no visible reaction. Several seconds later, the edge of the sleeve darkened, followed by flames spreading upward along the fabric. A sharp burning smell filled the air near the altar. Florence looked down and began pulling at the sleeve, which caused the fire to spread instead of extinguish. As she stepped backward during the struggle, her arm struck a freestanding decorative candle stand. The stand tipped and fell, spilling hot wax across the stone floor. The flame from that candle went out, but the fire on her clothing continued to burn as others nearby reacted. Witnesses described a brief hesitation as smoke rose and flames blocked access. When people moved in, the fire was contained, but the injuries were already severe. The wedding was canceled and later rescheduled at a different location. Paramedics reached Florence Adams after the area was cleared and provided emergency care before she was transported from the church. She died later that evening. The official cause of death was listed as complications from thermal burns and smoke inhalation, and the manner of death was ruled accidental. The church closed temporarily, and the altar area was restricted while repairs were made. When the church reopened, the damaged flooring near the altar had been replaced, and tall candle stands were removed from that section of the nave. It was August 11, 2015, on a humid summer afternoon in Tampa, Florida, when a routine appointment inside a small beauty salon escalated into a fatal electrical accident. The day had been busy, with clients booking services back-to-back as stylists worked to keep up with demand. The salon operated out of an older strip mall unit, with 6 styling chairs arranged in 2 rows and 2 shampoo stations along the back wall. The tiled flooring near the wash area was frequently damp from repeated hair rinses and cleanup between clients. Several customers were being serviced at the same time, and stylists moved quickly between stations, navigating cords, carts, and equipment. Marissa Cole was 42 years old. She worked in sales and was described by friends as assertive and particular about service experiences. Stylists who had encountered her previously recalled that she became confrontational when dissatisfied and was unwilling to accept delays or explanations she felt were unnecessary. That afternoon, Marissa arrived for a scheduled hair treatment and blow-dry. She was seated shortly after arrival, but grew visibly irritated while waiting, complaining about the temperature inside the salon and the pace of service. Staff members attempted to move her appointment forward to prevent further disruption and maintain the flow of the schedule. After her hair was washed, Marissa returned to the styling chair with her hair still heavily saturated. Water dripped from the ends onto the tiled floor beneath her feet. The stylist began towel drying, explaining that excess moisture needed to be removed before starting the blow-dry to prevent discomfort and equipment issues. Marissa objected and demanded that the dryer be used immediately, stating she did not want to wait any longer. Despite the stylist's hesitation, Marissa continued insisting. Witnesses later stated that she repeatedly leaned forward and gestured toward the blow dryer resting on the counter beside the chair. In an effort to comply and de-escalate the situation, the stylist retrieved a long-used hairdryer kept beneath the station and plugged it into a nearby outlet positioned close to the shampoo area. As the blow dryer was turned on, Marissa reached up and grabbed the device herself, attempting to direct the airflow toward her head. At the same time, she stood up from the chair, stepping onto the damp tile floor with bare feet. The combination of wet hands, exposed skin, and moisture on the floor created a hazardous situation. The electrical current traveled through the hairdryer, into Marissa's wet hands, and down through her body. She stiffened suddenly and collapsed beside the styling chair. The blow dryer fell to the floor, continuing to run briefly before being unplugged by staff. Employees immediately cleared the area and called emergency services. Marissa was unresponsive and not breathing normally. Attempts to assist her were limited due to concerns about electrical safety and the presence of water around the fallen equipment. Paramedics arrived within minutes and initiated emergency care. Marissa was transported to a nearby hospital where she was pronounced dead later that afternoon. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was electrocution. The manner of death was ruled accidental. Investigators noted that the combination of wet conditions, electrical equipment, and direct contact created a fatal pathway for the current. The salon was temporarily closed following the incident. Electrical outlets near wash stations were later relocated, and additional safety protocols were implemented regarding the use of electrical tools around water. It was June 14th, 2016, inside a small women's clothing boutique in a suburban shopping plaza in Mesa, Arizona. The store occupied a narrow retail unit with tight aisles and 5 fitting rooms along the back wall. Each fitting room measured roughly 4 feet by 5 feet, with an inward opening door, a wall-mounted mirror, and no call button or alarm inside. Rosario Bones, 38, lived alone in a nearby apartment complex and was not publicly known. She was unemployed at the time and frequently visited retail stores during weekday afternoons. Former co-workers later described Rosario as confrontational in customer-facing environments, especially when she felt questioned or redirected. Store staff recognized her from previous visits where she had challenged sizing standards and argued over store policies. That afternoon, Rosario entered the boutique alone and moved aggressively through the racks, pulling multiple garments from hangers without checking the size tags. She selected several items at once, including a dress labeled medium, despite the same design being available in larger sizes nearby. When a sales associate suggested an alternative size, Rosario reacted sharply, dismissing the suggestion and insisting the dress would fit. Her raised voice drew attention from nearby customers as she gathered the items and headed toward the fitting rooms. As Rosario entered one of the back stalls, the associate reminded her of the store's limit on items and again offered assistance. Rosario did not respond and shut the fitting room door forcefully. Within minutes, customers in adjacent stalls heard fabric stretching, abrupt movements, and repeated impacts against the walls from inside Rosario's fitting room. The tight, non-stretch dress became stuck around her chest, pinning her arms upward and forcing her upper body into a forward-bent position she could not straighten inside the cramped stall. Witnesses later described loud fabric tearing sounds, followed by heavy movement as Rosario struggled inside the stall. Her knees were drawn beneath her, and her upper body remained compressed forward as she continued forcing the dress downward. After several minutes of movement, the noise stopped abruptly. A sales associate knocked on the fitting room door and announced their presence. When there was no response, staff unlocked the door using a master key. Rosario was found collapsed in a seated position against the wall, still trapped in the dress. Her legs remained folded beneath her, and the inward opening door limited access inside the narrow stall. Attempts to reposition her were constrained by the confined space and the garment restricting her torso. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived after the area was cleared and assessed Rosario inside the fitting room. She showed signs of severe respiratory distress and was removed from the stall once the garment was cut away. She was transported to a nearby hospital, where she died later that day. The official cause of death was listed as positional asphyxia during a fitting room incident, and the manner of death was ruled accidental. In the months that followed, the store renovated the fitting room area, reducing the number of stalls and increasing their size. Employees who were present later described the incident as a reminder of how quickly routine situations can escalate when warnings are ignored and space becomes a limiting factor. It was July 4th, 2015, on a sweltering 94-degree afternoon in Riverside, Iowa, as residents gathered at the town's community center for an annual Independence Day celebration. One of the scheduled attractions was a charity hot dog eating contest, held outdoors under temporary tents as spectators watched from nearby seating areas. The event had been organized by local volunteers and drew a larger-than-usual crowd due to the holiday. Contest tables were arranged in a single row, with plates of hot dogs prepared in advance and water cups placed at each position. Several dozen families stood nearby as the contest was introduced. Margaret Stevens was 53 years old. She was a retired county health department inspector who had volunteered to assist as a contest judge. People who knew her described her as strict about food safety standards and accustomed to enforcing regulations during her career. Since retirement, she had continued attending community events where she often raised concerns about safety and compliance. Throughout the morning, Margaret expressed objections to the contest format. She questioned how the food had been prepared, how long it had been sitting out, and whether the contestants were being adequately monitored for choking risks. Organizers acknowledged her concerns but proceeded with the event as planned, citing permits and prior safety checks. As the contest began, Margaret moved closer to the front of the tables. Witnesses later stated that she repeatedly leaned forward while gesturing toward the plates, pointing out what she believed were unsafe practices. Her interruptions caused brief delays but did not stop the competition. Several minutes into the event, Margaret stepped forward and reached across the contest table toward the plates of hot dogs. At that moment, she lost her footing on the uneven ground near the table edge and fell forward. As she fell, her mouth was open and positioned directly over the food on the table. A large piece of hot dog was forced into her airway during the fall. Margaret immediately began showing signs of distress, clutching at her throat and struggling to breathe. Nearby contestants stepped back as spectators moved toward her. Multiple bystanders attempted to assist her using abdominal thrusts. Despite repeated efforts, the obstruction could not be dislodged. Margaret collapsed to the ground and became unresponsive within moments. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within several minutes and took over care. They attempted advanced airway maneuvers and resuscitation efforts on scene, but Margaret showed no signs of recovery. She was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The medical examiner later determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to choking. The manner of death was ruled accidental. The examination noted that the airway had been completely obstructed, leading to rapid oxygen deprivation. The hot dog eating contest was discontinued for the remainder of the day. In the weeks that followed, event organizers reviewed safety procedures for future gatherings, including clearer boundaries for volunteers and designated emergency response plans. No criminal charges were filed. The incident was later cited by local officials as an example of how quickly public events can become dangerous when individuals step beyond their assigned roles and attempt to intervene physically, even with the intention of preventing harm. It was December 23, 2015, on a mild 68-degree winter evening in Orange County, California, as holiday shopping traffic pushed a crowded mall parking lot to capacity. Vehicles circled continuously as drivers searched for spaces during one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The upscale shopping center had been busy since early morning. By late afternoon, most available parking spaces were occupied, and congestion had slowed traffic through the lot. Tempers among drivers were visibly strained as shoppers competed for limited parking. Karen Thompson was 41 years old and worked as a real estate agent. People who knew her described her as outspoken and prone to confronting others when she believed rules or etiquette were being ignored. She was particularly vocal about parking behavior and had previously engaged in disputes over what she considered improper use of shared spaces. After circling the lot for an extended period, Karen noticed a compact car parked in a standard space near a store entrance. Although the vehicle was properly positioned within the painted lines, Karen believed it should have used a smaller space farther away. She viewed the situation as inconsiderate given the crowded conditions. Karen parked her large SUV directly behind the compact car, preventing it from exiting. She then left her vehicle and entered the mall to shop. Before leaving, she placed a printed notice on the compact car's windshield expressing her dissatisfaction with the parking choice. Approximately 2 hours later, Karen returned to the parking lot. The driver of the compact car was standing beside the vehicle and appeared distressed. The woman explained that she needed to leave immediately to pick up her children from daycare and asked Karen to move her SUV. Karen refused. Witnesses later stated that she continued arguing over the parking issue and did not attempt to move her vehicle. The discussion grew more tense as the other driver repeatedly asked to leave. Several bystanders noticed the exchange but did not intervene. As the argument continued, Karen moved closer to the compact car and positioned herself near the driver's side door. When the other woman attempted to open the door to enter her vehicle, Karen stepped between the door and the car, attempting to prevent her from getting inside. The situation escalated physically when Karen reached for the car door handle as the other driver pulled it open. The sudden movement caused Karen to lose her balance. She fell backward onto the concrete surface of the parking lot, striking the back of her head. The compact car's owner immediately called 911 and attempted to assist Karen, who was unresponsive. Nearby shoppers gathered as emergency services were dispatched. Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes and began resuscitation efforts at the scene. Despite emergency care, Karen Thompson was pronounced dead in the parking lot. The medical examiner later determined that the cause of death was blunt force head trauma, resulting in a fatal brain hemorrhage. The manner of death was ruled accidental. Authorities reviewed the incident and found no evidence of criminal intent. The investigation concluded that the fatal injury occurred during a physical confrontation initiated over the parking dispute. The mall remained open and no charges were filed. It was May 7, 2020, on a mild 75-degree spring morning in Nashville, Tennessee, when a routine grocery store visit escalated into a fatal accident during a period of heightened tension over public safety rules. The grocery store was operating under temporary safety policies that morning, including posted signage requesting face coverings inside the building. Staff members had been instructed to remind customers of store rules and to contact security if disputes arose. The store was moderately busy, with shoppers moving through the aisles and employees restocking shelves. Deborah Williams was 41 years old and worked as an insurance claims adjuster. In the months leading up to the incident, she had become increasingly confrontational during public interactions, particularly when she felt rules were being enforced unfairly. She frequently recorded herself during disputes, posting videos online to document her experiences. That morning, Deborah entered the store without following the posted safety requirements. She began recording on her phone as she walked through the entrance, speaking toward the camera while moving through the front area of the store. Several customers noticed the behavior and stepped away. Store security approached Deborah near the produce section and attempted to redirect her toward customer service. Witnesses later stated that she refused to comply and continued filming while arguing with staff. The exchange drew attention from nearby shoppers, and employees requested additional assistance. As the situation continued, Deborah moved toward the front of the store. Still holding her phone, she climbed onto a stationary shopping cart near the entrance area, using it as a platform to continue addressing the people around her. Employees instructed her to step down, citing safety concerns. While standing on the cart, Deborah shifted her weight and gestured with her free hand. The cart rolled slightly, causing her to lose balance. She fell backward off the cart and struck the back of her head on the concrete floor. Nearby shoppers immediately backed away as Deborah lay motionless on the floor. Store employees called emergency services and attempted to keep the area clear. Deborah was unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. Paramedics arrived within minutes and began emergency care. Deborah was stabilized and transported to a nearby hospital. Despite treatment, she was pronounced dead approximately 2 hours later. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was traumatic brain injury resulting from blunt force trauma to the head. The manner of death was ruled accidental. Store security reviewed surveillance footage, which confirmed that Deborah had fallen after standing on the shopping cart. No evidence of physical contact by others was found. Authorities determined that no criminal charges were warranted. The incident prompted the store to reinforce safety policies regarding customer conduct and the use of equipment inside the building. Employees later described the event as a reminder of how quickly confrontations can escalate when individuals place themselves in unsafe situations. Thanks for watching. Click the next video to see more videos like this.